real quick synopsis of last night's game. We we challenged the guys in going into this game facing the leading passer in the SEC and the leading rusher in the SEC to make sure that we did two things, and that was to stop the run and to affect the passer. And with that being said, I thought from start to finish, snap 1 through 64, that the front played exceptionally well. They affected the run game. They affected the passer. They had on every single play of the game, we had the front four either knocking people back or affecting a rusher, and we did that playing good technique, used our hands, had good gap control. So it started up front and ended up front. Thought our linebacker group did a good job of fitting off of that. Did a good job with their eyes and being where they were supposed to be. And of course, the secondary did a good job in terms of not letting the top get knocked off the coverage. The guy had he could throw a pinpoint pass, and so we came out of the game. Obviously, they had 26 call runs. So it's a little bit different. We break it down because it doesn't help me. It doesn't help me to break down call runs and scrambles go on the run when we wasn't calling for the run. And so in the study of it, it was 26 call runs for 40 yards, 1.5 yards a carry. And then the passing game, they called 38 passes, in which we knocked him down 15 times and had 4 sacks. That was for 147, I think, and then averaged out per attempt at 4.6. We got 2 turnovers, obviously, and then we were able to send in third down and kept them off the board, with the exception of the field goal. So all in all, it was a very good, complete game. It's over. It's done with. And henceforth, as far as we're concerned, until the banquet occurs and they show highlight tape, they're not allowed to talk about Arkansas except to say thank you, and that's just kind of the way it is. I mean, we've moved on to Ole Miss. We've got a football team that started out at the beginning of the year in the top 10. They've played a very tough schedule. Make no mistake about it. You can look, and the record is no indication of how talented they are offensively. In their losses, they scored 34, 43, 30, and 21. That's a lot of points. And it was against some very good defensive football teams. So we've got to really be focused and go out on Tuesday, have a good day's practice, and make sure that we win that day. And then we'll go to Wednesday from there. Well, we've got a group there. We've always said that we had a group of about 8 to 9 when we're fully healthy that we feel comfortable in playing, and there's probably 6 to 7 of those guys that we feel comfortable at playing at any point in time in the game. And when you start seeing Andrew get a sack, Devereaux get a sack, Jeff Holland is really considered a starter to us with Marlon and 55. 1 and 95. I mean, he's considered a starter because when we go rabbits on third down, he goes in, and Dontavius comes out. He doesn't like to come out, but he comes out, and then Adam stays in with Carl. So that's a pretty good group of guys to keep them fresh. Well, there's freshmen playing all the way across the country, and I don't know those guys. I had one. I was on the team with one last year that played as a freshman, and he had the same traits. He was physically mature, he was mentally mature, but more importantly, he was mostly emotionally mature. It wasn't too big for him. even the whole college experience wasn't too big for him. Going to class, tutors, study hall, learning specialist, whatever it is, and then all the meeting time, and then going to the rigors of being in SEC football, sometimes can make their eyes get big. And with Marlon, it just doesn't do that. It's like he's been here for 3 years. He's a very mature young man across the spectrum, very talented too.
Let's talk about a guy like Chad Kelly. Obviously, a much different type of quarterback. He played one that was productive at Arkansas, but Chad's more of a gunslinger type. How difficult is that for a defense? Because he'll throw the ball at any time, anyway, really.
Yeah, well, the thing that Chad does is really is not as much different as you think it is. If you watch the two, they both throw a very, very good pass. The catch radius for the receivers is not too big. It's in a tight window, and they both have the ability to keep plays alive in terms of extend the play with their feet. Now, Chad's a little bit different in that they actually have run game built for him. So in that regard, there's a difference. But in the throwing game, there's not that much difference. No, it was 7. It was 7. He got 7. 7 hurries, 1 sack. I think it was 2 tackles, and then actually I know one of the other sacks that happened because of what Carl did. So he was very productive for the snaps he had. I think it was probably in totality his most productive game. Well, I think it's a little bit different in that they've been in games where they've had, I know, 2 top 10 teams and then another top 25 team last night. Arkansas, I don't know if they were ranked before they played Ole Miss or not, but it was kind of, those games were a little bit of a next man score games, and so I think that was part of it, and that it got into a scoring duel. Having played them several times, they still have the same run game in there. They're a little bit more RPO, run pass option, than they've been in the past, and I think that's where that skews some of it, where it's really a run that it's just pitch man in the option, but it's a short pass. But they are throwing it a little bit more. I think they're playing to Chad's, I wouldn't say strengths, but the productivity, if you will. But in the SEC West, it's hard to say, well, this happened last week or the week before, so this is what's going to happen this week. I think that was evident in watching Saturday night here. There was no indication that anybody would have ever said, watching the games preceding that, both by us or by them, that the results would have been what they were. And so I think each game has a life of its own, if you will. So we're going to have to prepare for both. Oh, Byron? Well, the productivity was there. They had a little more runs and activity to him, and he made a really good stop for a tackle for a loss on 3rd down. The problem is as we know as coaches, you turn the corner in the SEC West, it's kind of like going around the block. And there's another corner, and so you just got to keep turning corners. You never arrive.
How important is it to instill that mentality with the success there? Because before you got here, had struggles. Now there's success, and it's incrementally built to a level where last night was as dominant as it was, to ensure that with a younger defense, that
Right.
mentality of onward to the next thing, that this is the expectation on the team now.
Right. Well, that's a good question of how do you, the thing was when you're 1 and 2, how do you keep them alive and keep that process going and then believing in the process so that they keep working to to master their technique, to master how to play with great effort, to master how to be physical, to play one play at a time. Well, we got through that, and now they're experiencing success. So the process is now, how do you put things behind you and go back to work and know that the success you've had is because of the work you had. Now, having said all that, to say this, part of the process was painting a picture for them that this is what, we didn't say we were going to be 1 and 2, and you got to just keep believing. But we've ensured that, hey, there's going to be struggles in this process, and you just got to keep going. And there's going to be extreme successes in this process, and you've got to put that behind you and move to the next. Now, we preached it, and we preached it today. It's not a sermon that hadn't been preached since we arrived. But that having been said, too, is that there's no guarantee, so we will keep preaching it. But they've been pretty mature because of our leadership in the room. I think that came more evident in the open week, when there was all the reason in the world to lose a little bit of edge in practice, to not understand that, hey, we have to work as hard this week as we've worked all year long, and you don't have a game. And they came out and did that on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, and they really did it because of the leadership on the team.
Talk a little bit about Ole Miss's receivers and Ingram and all that. What kind of challenges they pose with their size?
Yeah, that's it. You just said it. It's they throw a lot of deep shot balls, and a lot of those balls are, you go get it. If you don't get it, it'll be interference, and that's kind of, there's a lot of that takes place in college football now. And so it is an issue. That's why you got to win early in the down on them. You got to win with technique early in the down, so that it doesn't put you in a position there. Make them work to get to that position. We tackled well. Obviously, I think that's would show up in this. It's one thing to say you tackle well. There's never a game where you don't come out and say, hey, that tackle could have been better, or hey, you missed that tackle. I don't remember one of those. But I will say this. When the leading rusher in the SEC has 17 yards, and they called 26 runs. So it wasn't like they gave up on the run and started calling 10 or 15 runs, because I've been in games where they gave up on the run, and you looked at the end of the day, they had 15 runs. That's giving up. 26 is not a huge number for them, but it's still a substantial number. And so obviously the tackling was good. And I think that was because there were a lot of gang tackling. But then on top of that, we did not give up a big play by our standard in that game, and that there were no runs over 15 yards. There were no passes over 20 yards. Now, they completed some passes in that 15, 16, 17-yard range, but they were tackled. And so we tackled well. Yeah, I have. See, we didn't have him in spring practice. It was the first year here, and so don't know what happened in the past. I watched some film, but obviously the guy had two shoulders that required major surgery on both of them. I think he's well. He is a quarterback. He runs it. He's the CEO of running things. And he really understands what we're doing conceptually and where his fits are, where everybody else's fits are. And he's playing at a high level right now. Yeah, he played. Yeah. He played and played well. He played some early, too. I mean, in the third quarter. Substantial reps. Did a good job when he was in there. Well, the thing that was probably the most encouraging thing is that it had been such a complete game up until the last couple of series, and then we made wholesale substitutions. I thought our young guys responded and went out there, and I think they had a 5 and out, a 3 and out, and a 3 and out. And obviously they were substituting too, but we don't control that. Pardon me? I not. I understand what you're asking in terms of who you're most surprised by. I don't think that is really how coaches look at it in terms of surprised. Uh, you kind of try to figure out where guys are and then how you can help them get better. I would say to see number 3, Marlon, start the year, and then here we are 7 games into it, and he has gotten better every week, and it still has not been too big for him as a freshman. That's hard to do. That's hard to do, particularly in the defensive line. Particularly in the defensive line. There's some big men out there now. Some big men. They were last night. All right.